Welcome to the SEC Unfiltered platform. I appreciate you guys listening to all our content on all our channels and platforms. I am your host, Dave Shumate, longtime SEC personnel recruiting staffer, and I'm here to give you the top 5 impact players for the Florida Gators heading into 2024. In case you missed our previous segments, we're going alphabetically. We've done Alabama, we've done Arkansas, we've done Auburn. Alabama was pretty difficult. New system, it's tough to factor those guys in. I thought Arkansas was relatively easy. Auburn had some sleepers in there. I think Florida, this is the one probably most proud of, the one we went more in depth reading between the lines here. Some people may be surprised with some guys we left off. But before we get to this segment that you're here for, we got to pay some bills, guys. We got to keep the lights on. But guys, first, go to MYBOOKIE.ag and use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. College football is just around the corner. We actually get football this week. August is tomorrow, folks. It's here. College football is here. Guys, go use our buddy over at MYBOOKIE.ag. Again, like I mentioned, use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. Those guys are great. That is who I use to place my wagers as well. But let's get to it. Top 5 impact players for the Florida Gators in 2024. Big year for Billy Napier and the boys. But coming in at number 5, we're going to reverse chronological order. We're going to go Graham Mertz at the quarterback position. Some may say he needs to be higher. I told you, there's going to be some controversy here. But Mertz and Spencer Rattler may have been the two most underrated, two most underappreciated, I'd probably say, guys in the SEC last year. It's probably because they both came from below average teams, but both were efficient, and especially Mertz. 73% passer in 2023, around 2,900 yards, 20 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. The only problem people will nitpick at his game, and I think it's just more of an efficiency-based thing, but he only averaged 8.3 yards per attempt. That was his average. So that's what holds some people up. You saw the drop-off when he went out. I mean, Max Brown finished the game against Missouri and then Florida State, but Florida probably wins both those games. Now, granted, I mean, you can make a case Florida State without Jordan Travis, too. It's closer, obviously, but we honestly missed that. I mean, we could have had a real quarterback showdown there with Graham Mertz and Jordan Travis. I think college football fans are robbed of that. But to my point, I think with Graham Mertz, they win the Missouri game, and they probably beat Florida State as Florida State was at that point with Tate Rodemaker. But now, I mean, he has a more serviceable backup now, Graham Mertz. DJ Lagway is behind him, so there's not as much drop-off as there was to Max Brown, but it's insignificant. Now, Lagway, hear me out. He has the upside, but if Mertz were to go down, folks, massive loss in today's college football game, in today's college football. It's the most important position on the team, and it's probably the most important position in all of sports. Factor in this is his second year in the system. The offensive line looks to be improved heading into the season with some position changes, added explosive threats through the transfer portal. I expect much of the same for Graham Mertz if he can stay healthy, and I think he will. Again, second season in the system. He was starting to hit his stride, I think, towards the end of the year before he got hurt. I like where Graham Mertz sits. I think he's going to have an impact. Again, I think a lot of that is because of his efficiency, first of all, but the position he plays. Like I said, most important position in the sport of football right now, high school, college, and professional level in the NFL, and probably in all of sports in today's game. Coming in at number 4, or the opposite side of the ball here, guys. We go on defense. We go Jason Marshall at the cornerback spot, one of the key returners on defense for Austin Armstrong and new DC Ron Roberts, and especially in the secondary, it's key. Secondary is as important as ever in college football. Remember what I just told you when we were talking about the offense. Quarterback, explosive plays. Who limits those? Pass rushers and secondary players, guys. You got to have depth in the secondary. I say it on every interview. Said it on Texags today when I was talking about Texas's secondary. Teams don't have depth in the secondary. Look at Alabama. It's young depth because the guys that play that 7th, 8th role, maybe 9th role, don't hang around. They go to the next best option to go play early. So most defenses now are base nickel, base dime. So you're using 5 to 6 DBs more. You're using a lot more than your traditional just 4 that we used to see back in the day. It's an offensive game too, and winning one-on-one matchups and playing in space, I should say, is the name of the game. And what position has to do that? Do both of those. Win their one-on-one matchups a lot of the time. Corners. Who has to tackle in space, especially in today's game? Very spatial game out on the perimeter. Corners. You got to win your one-on-one matchups, and you got to be able to tackle. I mean, Florida was a poor tackling team last year. A lot of that was Jalen Kimber, Jason Marshall. You go back and watch the film, especially against Georgia. a little bit against Utah. He's a good blitzer off the edge at corner cat pressure. I like what he did last year. One of the more solid tacklers. He actually, again, in a very weak secondary from a tackling standpoint, even if he didn't get them to the ground, he used the leverage of the sideline. He used the sideline as his friend and forced them out. So I thought he was the more cerebral, used his leverage to make tackles as well. I like what Jason Marshall was doing. He was one of the few bright spots, like I mentioned in 2023. Having a chess piece right when you walk into the program and having a building block on that back end. I'm telling you, people, you got to have that stake in the ground. You got to have that guy. You don't want to be replacing a whole secondary. He's one of the veterans. They've added some veteran experience, but new DC, Ron Roberts coming over from Auburn, joining the young cat, Austin Armstrong. He was probably a little fired up when he first walked in, first day in the building at Florida, looking at the defensive depth chart, being like, all right, we got a guy we can trust there. He's going to help us do a lot on that back end from a disguise and scheme-wise, what we can do. Jason Marshall's that guy. He's going to be an impact player for the Gators in 2024, and especially on defense. Coming at number 3, stay on the same side of the ball, and let's stay in the secondary as well. Safety, Washington transfer, Asa Turner. Guys played over 1,700 snaps, played with a broken hand in 2023 for Washington, who, remember, guys, they played the national championship game. 0 touchdowns allowed over the last 2 seasons in Seattle. Now, you may be like, how many snaps did he play? 486 coverage snaps. I looked it up. That's a lot, guys. 0 touchdowns allowed in the last 2 seasons in Seattle. And that's a lot of coverage snaps, 486 to be exact. Florida needed experience in the back end, and Turner is heading that new group of veterans that Florida added in DJ Douglas and then Triquez, Bridges. They added some of those guys. I like Bridges. I like Douglas. And then obviously we're talking Asa Turner here. The young talent's there, Jordan Castile, Bryce Thornton. But again, you don't want to rely on all those guys. You want some of those guys to get their feet wet as they go. Again, if they have to be thrown in the fire, it is what it is. We're suiting up on Saturday. We're snapping the ball. We're lining up. It is what it is. Let's go play football. Let's set our guys up for the best success possible. But you like some older guys. I think give Florida credit. Give Florida credit on adding some guys like Bird Sherrill, who run the college scouting side of things over there at Florida, has an NFL background with Detroit Lions. One of my buddies does a really good job of advanced scouting for Florida. He was involved with Douglas, Bridges, and our guy Asa Turner. And again, hear me out, guys. I'm not saying Asa Turner is going to be Ed Reed or Derwin James here. Sorry, Florida fans, for using the Florida State reference with Derwin James. But just the veterancy and the experience adds an impact to a defense that needs older players outside of Jason Marshall to be contributors. You need, like I mentioned, you don't want those young cats. And again, they've played a little, but you needed some of that veteran experience. I think Asa Turner is key there. Also some other additions, but I think Asa Turner, again, I think Jason Marshall's the better player, but I think the impact with Asa Turner playing that safety spot, bringing that culture, he'll play hurt. You want guys that are like, hey, man, I want to go play. I played with a broken hand, had hand injury, had 2 hands on both different hands, had hand injuries he played with. Again, allowed 0 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons, 486 coverage snaps. Guy's a football player, guys. And you need those kind of guys, especially veteran ones. So that's why Asa Turner, the safety, the Washington transfer, comes in at number 3 for me. We're going to the opposite side of the ball, but we're staying in the same department, folks. Transfer portal. Florida did a pretty good job with the transfer portal. The roster is better than what people are giving it credit for. Schedule hard, no doubt about it. But I'm feeling Florida's record is going to be Florida's team is going to be better maybe than what the record shows. But number 2, Elijah Badger, the wide receiver from Arizona State, had 10 touchdowns and roughly around 1,500 yards receiving in the last 2 years in Tempe at Arizona State. The thing I love about this guy, is it adds another potential big play threat to go alongside Eugene Wilson. I mean, you go back and watch the film. I think it was the Washington State game. They were deep. They were in the green zone, deep red zone, within the 10-yard line. They used him, Arizona State did against Washington State, as a jet sweep. Put his foot in the ground once he got on the perimeter, I think, to the field, and got his shoulder squared real quick north and south. You just saw the change of direction. You see the explosiveness with him. And I think there's a little bit more the frame can carry a little more mass than what he takes. And then Florida changed their whole strength and conditioning program up this year. So that should help too, him in the summer. But you saw that when you go back and watch film. But like I said, the thing I love is the big play of threat to go alongside Eugene Wilson, who outside of last year, Trevor Etienne, who's now at Georgia, the running back Trevor Etienne in the passing game can be explosive. Those are really the only 2 explosive threats. I love Montrell Johnson, but he's not really an explosive threat. Again, folks, explosive plays are critical in today's college football. I keep saying it to anyone who will listen. If you can have 2 explosive threats, like Elijah Badger and Eugene Trey Wilson, this only opens up plays for guys like Like I mentioned, Eugene Wilson, if Elijah Badger can step up. Then Shamir Dyke, the Wisconsin transfer. Arliss Boardingham at the tight end spot. Now, I mentioned Martrell Johnson at the running back spot. He's not an explosive guy. Nobody's going to put him in that category. But if you have multiple threats on the perimeter, using them in the jet sweep game, maybe some orbit motions, that's only going to open up more potential explosive plays, maybe 5 to 10 extra yards. Because, again, I don't think Montrell Johnson has home run ability, but he can extend those 15-yard runs maybe into 2025, and that's going to pay off, again, if you have explosive threats on the run and make the defense have to scheme and pay attention to more of those offensive weapons on game day and throughout the week when they're prepping. Everyone benefits across the board on that. So that's why I think Elijah Badger comes into impact, not best player, folks, impact. And then number one, this one may come as some surprise to some people. Like I struggled last year at the offensive tackle spot. I think a movement is going to be critical for him and the offensive line. Damen George coming at the offensive guard spot. And again, I know some people won't agree with this one, but Florida's success starts on the offensive line. George moving to the interior at the right guard spot is not only going to make himself better, but the entire unit. And I think some of this is because of other transfer portal additions, Devin Manuel and Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon. Crenshaw-Dixon coming over from San Diego State. Those two guys are offensive tackles. Damen George was too heavy last year. He has stated that. You go back and watch the Utah game, he got abused, either penalties, pre-snap penalties, or just getting beat one-on-one. He's not an offensive tackle. He's a bigger body on the inside that will see bigger bodies across from him. He was facing more undersized, more athletic guys on the edge. He couldn't keep up last year, first of all, because he's not a tackle. That's not where he's best suited, and because he was overweight. And I say this because the offensive line is so key. What Rob Sell in that group, the offensive line coach for Florida, essentially Billy Napier's right-hand guy, even going back to his Louisiana days, the offensive line is so key to me. And I like what they've done. It's deeper. I think it's a better unit. Guys are in better positions to be their best selves, which will only help Florida become the best offensive line and the best offense they can be. Because, again, we know what Graham Mertz can do. We know what Trey Wilson can do. He's explosive. And I believe Elijah Badger is going to just come piggyback off that and be another explosive player. We know Montrell Johnson can be a beast between the tackles and that workhorse running back that they have. But if this offensive line comes together, this offense can be really good. It can be really good. It's that simple. Like I'm just throwing some stats. So Florida finished 2023 ranked 71st among FBS teams in rushing attempts, 4.1, and finished 115th in quarterback sack percentage. For comparison, Florida's offensive line just allowed 13 sacks through the entirety of the 2022 season, which is second fewest in the SEC. So they got in 15th nationally, just so we're being clear. So it got worse last year. And I think that's because some guys were playing out of position because they didn't have the right chess pieces and they didn't have the right depth. They now have more of those chess pieces to make a more winnable offensive line unit across the board. And that's not even factoring in they're going to have more depth. If the offensive line and Rob Sell can get it to go in on the offensive line, the whole offense is going to benefit from this. It's not going to matter what the four other guys do. And I'm really talking about the other two offensive guys I'm talking about with Elijah Badger and Graham Mertz. But if the offensive line gets going, watch out. Again, Graham Mertz, second year in the system, you're adding more explosive threats. You got to, between the tackle or running, you got to have a little bit, you got to find that home run threat, maybe in the backfield. Maybe you line Eugene Wilson up, Elijah Badger, one of those guys. But if the offensive line gets gelled, there's going to be a lot of options for Florida to have a successful, winnable offense, winnable unit across the board. But some guys that just missed the cut, you may argue Eugene Wilson. We know what he's going to do. I know the impact he's going to have. I just think these other five guys are going to be more impactful for what Florida needs in 2024. Explosive threat, one of the more explosive threats in the entire country and conference. Jake Slaughter at the center position. I know what he can do. He's played there. We've seen what he can do. I think the impact of Damen George is going to have a greater impact on Florida overall. Shamar James at linebacker spot. Young cat. He's done a really good job in that front seven. And then I mentioned some of the young guys in the back end. Jordan Castile could have been that impact guy. Could be good or negative, though, but he would have been thrown into the fire, sink or swim kind of deal. But so those are just some guys that missed the cut. You could probably throw in Montrell Johnson as well, but I know I'm going to get with him. He's a between the tackle guy, fall forward for 4 or 5 yards. I know what it is. It's an explosive game now in offense, folks. I keep saying that you need some kind of explosive game. But just reviewing 5 through 1 here, coming at number 5, my top 5 impactful Florida Gators heading into 2024. Number 5, the quarterback, Graham Mertz. Number 4, Jason Marshall coming in at the cornerback spot. Asa Turner, the safety transfer from Washington, has played a ton of snaps, played beat up. He's the kind of culture veteran you need on that back end to help amplify that Florida secondary that fundamentally wasn't great last year outside of Jason Marshall. Elijah Badger, another explosive threat. They need it. Somebody needs to help Trey Wilson. And then number 1, Damen George. I think this could be one of the more impactful position moves. Again, he's staying obviously on the offensive line, but he played tackle last year, overweight, bigger guy, faces bigger guys across from him. He's not going to get beat by a little bit leaner, smaller, more athletic guys. I think Damen George at the offensive guard spot is going to be one of the bigger moves in the SEC this year. I'm just telling you, folks. I'm just telling you. But appreciate you joining us on this segment of the top 5 most impactful players for the Florida Gators heading into 2024. Again, guys, I'm your host, Dave Shumate, coming at you here from the SEC Unfiltered platform. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We're going to be here all fall. We also cover basketball and baseball if you're new to the show, guys. But again, I appreciate you joining us. You have a phenomenal day.